Is everybody happy?
Yeah.
Woo!
Had a good night?
Yes.
Breakfast is amazing. We need to thank the breakfast people. Thank you, Valerie and Valerie. Valerie and Valerie. Valerie and Valerie. And Anna, of course. Anna, right. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so today we're here to have more fun, which is wonderful. And some of the best part of the fun is our wonderful friend Bridget. So Bridget and I have been having fun, as you know, on YouTube recordings and for a long time. I am totally impressed. Bridget, I mean, young and going around the world and teaching and putting the message out there, healing ancestor memory with both Mormon and indigenous background, which puts the fire of shamanism in her blood, and she might be able to wiggle her nose. No, but she really has an amazing skill and experience, and has been doing a lot of work at sacred sites. And anyway, we really like Bridget, so you'll love it.
Bon matin, everyone. Good morning. I'm really honored to be here with all of you, and it's been so wonderful the past couple of days to be, in the crowd, to hear the amazing speakers, and to hear all of you speak last night, and to just realize I'm in such beautiful company, and that any of you actually could stand up here for an hour and speak, and it would be deeply fascinating and rich. So thank you all so much for your presences. So I would love to presence that we are on the precipice of the equinox right now, right? This weekend, tomorrow, I think, is the timing right here. And it's the time of perfect balance. It's the time of equal harmonization of the masculine and the feminine. And in that space, in that light, I want to talk about that balance today, particularly the balance of the feminine. And the feminine that lives in each of us. So whether we're male, female, or other, that feminine principle lives within us. And as I was thinking about this talk, and Dan said, feminine mysteries and ancestral healing, I thought, what would be the most significant, what would be the most helpful around this? And as well, that includes the masculine. What do you need?
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. And as I was thinking about this, and as I was contemplating what is needed right now in humanity, we're on the precipice of a big evolution, right? Whether we call it an awakening, we're in this space of an invitation to either evolve and to move into these spaces of bliss, or to destroy ourselves, annihilation. So we're in this interesting space right now, in the birth canal of this space, of this time in humanity, for one or the other. And when I was thinking about that birth canal analogy, of course, it brought me back to the feminine, brought me back to that which sustains us alive. Without the Mother Earth, without our earth, without women, and without the ability to birth life, without the feminine within the masculine, we don't exist. It's very, very significant, and it's been out of balance for a very, very long time. And so I want to explore this, and I want to explore it in the context of ancestral memory, so that we can bring this part of ourselves, that balanced feminine, back into harmony with ourselves, which will lead to all of the things that we've been talking about this weekend, which will lead to the implosion, which will lead to bliss, which will lead to all those energies. So that's how we're going to be looking through the lens today in this conversation. And I have to begin by saying hello to where we are. So we are in southern France. We're in this incredible space, in this incredible territory that has living memory, and that's what Dan talks about a lot, this living memory that lives in the land that's very ancient. So there's ancient energies here, ancient elemental energies, but there's also the history of the Cathars, right? And the history of Mary Magdalene coming post the time of Jesus and bringing love, bringing compassion, bringing all of the teachings with them, with him, with all of that energy here to this land. And I don't pretend to be an expert on that, but I do feel the energy even just being here. And so I want to take a moment for us to just tune in to that frequency. So if you will, just close your eyes for a moment. And to presence this amazing landscape that we're in. I know a lot of us have been having very interesting dream times and maybe not even sleeping with all the different things and visions coming through. And so just calling in the beautiful ancestors of this land, the ones ancient and long past, that were based, their principles, their community were based in love, in connection, in harmony, in unity with each other, within nature, that lived in union, in equal balance between men and women, the masculine and the feminine, and held that deep space of reverence for themselves, for each other, for the land. And so we invite in that living template of this beautiful memory that all of us need at this time in humanity to be here with us during the rest of the conference and for this conversation. And of course, always inviting in the mother, the earth, these incredible mountains, elder spirits, the pristine water and energy and frequency right outside this space, the fresh air, the wind, the fire from this morning, the fire in the sun. And we give thanks to all that sustains us alive. And all those who have walked the path before that can help us remember our purpose, our roles, our sacred responsibilities as we walk this path of life. So just taking in a nice deep breath in, offering out a prayer, a blessing. Good, and coming back into the space. It feels nice, doesn't it?
When you said feel the ancestors, I felt a rush, actually. I really did.
It's very palpable.
I've lived here before.
Yeah, they're like, they're happy we're here.
Yeah. They're happy we're here, and we're happy they were here, right? And there is no separation between that time space. As I have explored many of land spaces, time space dissolves, and we can just be in union with each other and really learn and to really listen. And we carry all those energies within us too. Within each of our bodies lives the living memory of the earth, of the cosmos. We are direct microcosms of the planet itself. That's a lot of why we feel so much and maybe even want to shut down so much, is because we have that. And because we have that, we have this ability, this amazing ability of creatorship. We are divine creators. And we have that is revered through the cosmos. That ability to ensoul, that ability to bring life. But right now it's a little wobbly, right? There's things going on in the world where, say, infertility, The confusion of even if you want to be a male or a female is going on. And I can see why there is so much confusion, because we've gotten far away from who we are. And so there's a lot that then has happened in the imbalanced masculine, with the feminine being suppressed, the colonization, the hyper-technology, all these things that are happening because of the lack of the feminine energy within us. And it's really, there's always it there, it just is distorted or imbalanced. And I think that's where it gets off kilter and it gets a bit wonky. So I want to explore how we come back into this feminine balance within ourselves and how we get back to ourselves. So the first place to start, which I love, is the energy of cycles and getting back into the rhythm. We were talking a lot about rhythm yesterday. And right now in the pace of the world, it's very fast. It's non-stop, right? There's cities that never sleep, and they celebrate that kind of energy, where there is no downtime, there is no rhythm, it's just go, 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 right? And so how do we return to this beautiful rhythm of ourselves? And the beautiful thing is that we have so much around us to reflect and easily bring us back to this place, which is nature. So we have the sun that rises every day, we have the moon that rises and falls, we have the cycles of the earth, and that is the template that can bring us back into harmony and back into balance, which can enliven our energy fields, bring us back into harmony so that we can do all the really cool stuff, the implosion, have the bliss in soul life. And so those are the things that we want to explore and dive into. So right now we have this energy of just kind of one station, but there's this flow that happens that's really, really magical when we tune into all of these different celestial bodies and energies. So in the Toltec lineage, which I studied with, I studied for a year, which originally came from the Olmecs. And the Toltec lineage was all about, how do I charge my energy field? How do I charge my soul, my field, my body to be able to lucid dream, to be able to carry memory through death? And what they discovered, because they're very ancient, they knew and they were still connected to nature in this way, they figured out that there's about 4 ways to do this. And the first way is to connect with the sun. And not only to connect with the sun at sunrise and at sunset, but also the sun as it maximizes to fullness, of full solar noon, and also wanes. So that was interesting. They also utilized the moon, and they didn't just use the full moon. They weren't just like, okay, I'm going to go charge up in the full moon. No. They wanted all of the phases of the moon. They wanted the black moon, which is like the death, so it's before the new moon even rises. They wanted that pure blackness, that void, that emptiness, that death. They wanted the new moon. They wanted the waxing moon. They wanted the full moon. They wanted the waning moon. They knew that every single part of the cycle was essential for balance, as well as every single part of the cycle was necessary to initiate us into these energies. So we need, for instance, that waning moon. We need that release. We need that slowing down. We need that forgiveness. We need that letting go. We need that death that leads us into the new moon, right? We need that complete, almost like annihilation or dropping away to be able to then birth new life. So in this experience of kind of seeing how they're doing it, we're learning again, how do we actually create life? And we need all of the aspects of the cycle to be able to do this. We need the full cycle, not just sunrise, not just full moon, we need the whole thing to do this. So they did this with the sun, they did this with the moon, and then one of their other special powers was that they realized that we needed to let go. We needed to let go of shadow. We needed to let go of anything that was not serving us and actually let it die. We really needed to address those things because that would give us enough energy and it would give us enough clearing of the space to really let everything flow. So that was an essential piece. And then the black mirror, the obsidian mirror, was always a key. And I was thinking about the obsidian mirror. There were a lot of different practices that they did that would help enhance this lucid dreaming. And one of the primary practices, which was kind of haunting and really beautiful, was to use the obsidian mirror or use a regular mirror to let go of identity. It was actually to let go of our personality, let go of stories, let go of identity, so that we could actually come into our true selves. So through this kind of lens of the Toltecs, we can see that this full rhythm, this full cycle is very, very necessary. And this begins to remind us and elevate us to the beautiful energies that live within the feminine that we can cultivate, which are those energies of forgiveness, of kindness, of compassion, of grace, all of these really beautiful energies that maybe don't seem that important, or they could just go and we can still go forward, but those are the energies that take us through that waning moon. Those are the energies that elevate us to start again, and those are the energies that help us continue and to process and to clear out so that we can go forward. So that's part of coming back into harmony. And they actually used, they would charge their field. So they would use their fingers with the moon, like this is the black moon, the waxing moon, the full moon. They would charge their fingers with the moon, and then they would charge their field with it. They would charge their bodies with the sun. But ultimately, it was that full cycle that was needed. If one was missing, it didn't work. The lucid dreaming didn't work. The creationship didn't work. And these energies were also to charge the body for healing, for balance. And so there's a lot that we can see by that, right? In coming back into that full balance. So with that, I want to explore some of where we've been as humanity to clear that out of the way so that we can really step into where we're going, particularly in this realm of the feminine. So you guys have heard for a long time that the feminine's been suppressed, right? We've heard this a lot. And I think particularly in the past, 10, 20, 50 years, there's been this pendulum swing to where then the feminine almost kind of rises above, or like women rise above men. And it was never supposed to be that way. And yeah, it's emasculating.
Masculizing femininity.
Yep. It's masculizing femininity, right? Where it's like there's masculine, feminine. We're meant to be in harmony. We need each other. We need these energies. And the truth of the matter is that there has been a suppression of the feminine. But when we say that, it's the suppression of the feminine within men as well as women themselves. And this suppression's kind of interesting because as I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about the fear of the feminine that's taken place on the planet for a long time, I'm like, why? Why is there so much fear of the feminine? And looking back and hearing different stories, it's like the imbalanced feminine, when she's suppressed and when she's not in this place of revered appreciation and to be in her full expression, is scary, right? Like scary. It can get kind of scary where it turns into this dark feminine energy. And there's immense power, particularly like in women and in our creatorship. And there's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of unknown. Like, what the heck is happening? Like during birth, like what the heck is happening? Every month when she's bleeding, right? It can look scary, and there's actual blood like everywhere. And so, right? Like there's blood and it's gory. And so the church and different people were like, this is bad. This must mean that it's sinful, right? This must mean that there's something wrong. When in all reality, if we go back to that Toltec approach, the full cycle is needed. If we are meant to be these creator beings that move to this maximum during ovulation, where millions of zinc cells, atoms, go to the ovaries for that zinc spark moment of ovulation to ensoul, to create, if there's this maximum creation that can happen to create life, to create soul, there has to be the other, right? There needs to be the release. There needs to be the destruction. And that's just the matter of it. It's just the approach, right? And realizing that there is a mystery to it and we can't understand everything. And a lot of my basis, I realized as I was getting ready for this talk, and that I'm in Europe right now, and I am of European descent, but I realized how much impact and how so much of my own feminine remembrance has come actually from the Americas and the indigenous Americas, and how much that has really informed my remembrance in many Native American cultures. So the Native America of modern day US, because there's lots of Americas over there, they had a very different approach, right? So there's this fear of the feminine that has come from Orion, this massive fear of when the female goes out of balance and uses her power to diminish the masculine, to diminish actually like life. And when the feminine's imbalanced in that way, she forgets to how to ensoul, because she forgets all of those essential elements of care, of nurture, of all these things that are life-giving to be able to ensoul. So it's, okay, so Orion, yeah, like we're scared of the feminine. The Aboriginals, we can see that in Europe they were scared of the feminine, burning them all the time, I've been there. But in some places they weren't. And so that's where, again, we come back to the living memory of what is the template of harmony, what we can tune into. And some of the stories in Native America are amazing, where these tribes revered the women for their gifts, and even during moontime, during bleed. And we're so connected that women in those times, we bled together. Like we were on the same cycle. Right now we're popcorn, but we bled together. We're just all over the place and you don't know what's coming, right? But at that time they knew. And they had the red tent. They would all go into the same place and they would bleed. And in this time of bleeding, which I know that we're going to be talking about bleeding right now, but it's very powerful and it's important to know. And that's part of why there's been such a fear of the feminine, is because we don't understand. And when we understand, then we can be in this place of reverence and support. And so in this time of bleeding, women have this incredible ability to see, to get vision, to get dream. I'm curious about the science, if anyone wants to figure out why and what's going on. But in one of the stories, the Native American chief was awoken in the middle of the night by one of the women who was in the red tent bleeding, and had this vision that their village was going to be attacked that next morning, and everyone was going to be killed. And so she went to the chief and she's like, this is what I dreamt, this is what happened. And he listened to her and he said, I trust your intuition, I trust your dreams. We're packing up the whole town. They left all the teepees, they left everything there, so it seemed like they were there. But everyone got out, and then from a nearby hill, they watched as the next morning, the entire village got attacked. And so this is part of the power, right, of the feminine. And when it is revered, when there's space, like Iris was so beautifully saying with the children last night, when there's space, when there's this receptivity, when there's acknowledgement and understanding, then the magic can really come, right? Then it's available. And this is something that we can continue on into adulthood, right? Because we need to be in this space where we continue to have our own souls so that we can nurture those to come. And to do that, we need to be in this new space. So that's an example of how that was utilized. At the same time, these same tribes said, when the women are on their moon time, they can't touch the water, they can't touch the food, they can't touch sacred objects, not in a mean way. We're in the destructive phase. We're in the space of negativity. That's okay. That's where it's at. So that life can spiral around again and we can come back to this space. So we can see that is a very different approach than, for instance, the Scottish king who thought that a woman actually tied a knot and untied a knot for his whole fleet to be destroyed, like witchcraft, right? And then he went on a full rampage of killing thousands of women for witchcraft because of this fear of her power, right? But the fear of the power is only relevant if she is not acknowledged, if she is not revered. If there's appreciation and care and acknowledgement, it's no problem. Then all of those gifts are used for good. And this goes to the same for the men and for the masculine, right? Is listening to this deep inner voice of the intuition and speaking that into form in a very good way. And creation happens in a lot of ways. Like we're talking a lot about like womb creation, right? And creating new life and creating new souls. But there's creation in the thoughts that we have. There's creation in the speaking that we have. And how we know that it's so powerful is because, you know, we even have the hand motion of being suppressed or being quieted, right? And so that speaking has immense power. And as we're in this place, in this territory, and we're talking about Magdalene energy, we're talking about the feminine energy, this expression and the power of it. Does anyone know what bone was taken from Magdalene's relics by the church for hundreds of years? Sequestered in the Vatican? No? Her jawbone. Yeah. So of any bone that could be taken, like of anything that was taken of her, it was the jawbone. That's how powerful our voices are, male or female, to speak on behalf of that intuition, of that rising, of what we know isn't right, like when we have that discernment and when we speak to the truth of what is needed, right? So that's another way that we're creating and have that ability. So
The jawbone was the switch for the crystal skull, which is the dragon queen, you know.
was it?
Yeah, it's a switch, literally, electrically, yeah.
Wow. And we know that the throat of the female matches the anatomy of our precious parts, right? So there's a creation match in even that anatomy of what's available there. So now I want to move into the ancestral healing and the living memory. So we've moved through this idea of coming back into rhythm with the full cycle of what we are, the full cycle of all of our energies, and actually gaining immense life force through that process. Even though it doesn't seem like it. It's like, okay, I'm on the floor, say, bleeding, or I'm on the floor, like crying, right? Releasing. That is actually something that brings life, brings energy, because these qualities of the feminine, as Dan has said, you know, that empathy, that feeling, when we tune into that energy, we can help match and mirror and steer tornadoes, right? We can feel the pain of the ancestors. We can feel the pain of the tornado, and we can heal it by just that acknowledgement, that empathy, that feeling. Just like in the constellation talk last night, it's really the acknowledgement and the feeling that changes the whole constellation, that changes the whole field. And so that's what we can tune into in this exploration. So for me, it was not always this way. Actually, growing up, there was not even a chance in the world that I thought I would ever speak out loud, and especially in front of a big group. That just wasn't going to happen. I come from a lineage that is highly suppressed. And my mom's here. Did you guys know my mom's here? Hi, Mom. Hi, Mom. And we came from that past paradigm. We came from that past template for generations, for 7 generations. We came from Mormon lineage in Salt Lake City in Utah. We were some of the original pioneers, and the women in that culture were used as breeding horses to just get about 14 kids out to repopulate the lands, right? There was no reverence, like not an ounce of it. And to the degree where it was like, I'm gonna have actually like many wives, right? And just that use, right? That objectification, but just that really, really low belittlement energy. And being born into that, I mean, I was born into incredible parents, and they had moved through a lot of those layers, but it took me about 15 years to continue to clear out those ancestral patterns that I was born into, and to come back into my full expression, my full reverence for myself, like all of these pieces, to the degree where, yeah, I used to not be able to even speak, because the voice and the energy was that shut down. And so the way that I did that is by traveling the world, is by going to these places, is by connecting with these people that remember, that know. And that exists for all of us. So in doing that, we find that original healed template of those things that maybe are wounded or in pain in ourselves. And so we can find what that resolution is. We can find what that healing frequency is and tune into that energy. And it was to the point where in my early 20s, one of the first things I did on my path was I did family constellation for years. I highly recommend it. I loved the talk yesterday on it. And the woman who was leading, who was this incredible shaman, just an amazing shaman, said, Bridget, this is the deal. You've been in this constellation for many years, like working with other people, you know, like being a volunteer. And we've looked at all different kinds of people from all over the world, all different kinds of dynamics, all different kinds of constellations, because I was in Los Angeles and there's a whole mix of people, right? And she goes, in all my years of doing this, I've never seen a lineage like more chaotic and broken. And she said, there's no way to heal this, and that's just what you have to accept. And so you have to go find something else. You have to go find that new energy. You almost like a new family, right? A new template to connect in with. And so I felt that, and I did that to a lot of degree. But I knew I have a very strong willpower, and I know that healing and wholeness is possible no matter what. Like no matter what you've been through, and no matter what your family has experienced, healing is absolutely possible. I knew that. That was a knowing that I had in my own memory, and the memory that exists. And so I did that. And it took me about, the 15 years. And I have liberated my own self and connected to these amazing streams of support from other lineages, from other places, but also with my own family, you know? And it's taken time, and not everyone is there. But through the work that I've done, it's helped my mom, right? It's reconnected us, because we had a broken relationship, because when you come through this lineage of women that are broken, and then you're the next broken woman, and then you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, how did I end up here? Where were you? And then it's like, well, I didn't have that either. I didn't have that either. And so there's this brokenness that happens. And so through my process, I've rebonded and reconnected with my mom, with our lineage, and we're strengthening that. And it's opened my brother, it's opened the energy, and like during the time that I've been doing this, there's crazy illuminating energies that have been happening, even like in the Mormon lineage, and like all this coming out of the things that have happened, and there's healing happening. So when I look back on that 22-year-old self and go, and to that shaman who knows, very, very advanced, I say, no, there is a way to heal. I'm not trying to resolve the whole thing, right? I'm not trying to heal the whole thing, but the parts that I can heal, I can connect in with. And through that process, it's just been amazing, because the more that we are receptive, the more we tune into this feminine energy within ourselves, the solutions come, the energies come. And some of it isn't pretty. Some of it's not pretty at all. The things that I saw, I didn't even know that they've been washed from the history, but they come back up because they're in us. And we want to come back to wholeness. We want to come back to harmony. And sometimes those pains or those things that keep on repeating, they're actually just wanting to be acknowledged so that they can move. And that's what's happened with me, and seeing, some of the genocide that happened there because of my ancestors, and that's part of the healing too. And so in this place as well, in this place that we are, there was massive genocide that happened to the Cathars, to these people that lived here. And so I bring acknowledgement to that space. I'm not planning on healing it or anything like that, but the first step is acknowledging that that's what happened. And in that, also seeing and focusing on, not dismissing, but focusing on those healed parts, right? Those templates, going beyond those traumas to be strengthened by our lineages, to be strengthened by the energy of our land and our soul, so that we have the energy, so that we have the courage to look at these things that we might need to shift, that we might need to let go of, to be able to come back into this space of harmony. And so all of these things are required, right? We were talking about like the collective fear of the feminine and that misunderstanding, not really knowing what's happening. And then there's the ancestral component of those things that are carried on and live within us. In the Toltec tradition, they say that over 50% of our challenges, of our issues, of our trauma, come from the ancestors and are carried through in our DNA. And they're so entwined with us, we don't even know that it's not us. And then when we start peeling it back, we realize that it's not us at all. We are these deep, profound, whole beings. And it doesn't mean that we need to completely step away and push our lineage, or our family, our collective humanity away. The key is to plug in to these living memories in the land and these healed templates and go back beyond the time where these wounds took place, right? For us, say it would be that 7 generations. To go back, even if I need to go back like 500 years, I'll go back 500 years, right? And I have to those places and to those ancestors that do remember, that are healed, and start to really feel those in us and allow in that guidance, allow in that connection so that we can come back into this space of harmony. So that's some of what I wanted to share today. And is there anything else you want me to speak to?
Well, you said that the Mormons were involved in kind of the genocide of the Utes.
Yeah.
And you had family members on both sides of that story.
Yeah.
And somehow it's because that both sides of that bloodline were in you that you were able to.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's so important to realize, because it's also part of the harmony is neutralizing and having massive compassion for the victim and the perpetrator, right? And not staying in one or the other. And we can see that polarity right now on the planet is stifling, and it doesn't work. And to realize, no matter what the dynamic is, that we have both, right? And what I'm talking about with the Toltec lineage, Sergio Magana, my teacher, he had a past life of being one of the Spanish conquistadors that was determined to wipe out those original teachings of the Olmecs and the Toltecs. And his mission in this life was to find every last shaman and teacher and wise woman to make sure that those stayed alive. They're always alive in the land, but to make sure that they stayed alive for us to be able to utilize, for me to be able to talk about today, right? And each culture has these. Each culture has their own magic, no matter what your lineage is, which is so incredible. And for me, I have had the great opportunity, being the mutt that I am, to be able to alchemize these inside of me. And it's actually a great opportunity because it literally isn't outside of you. It's like, I can't blame that person. I'm both of them, right? I am the English person that was suppressing the Scottish and Irish in myself. Like, what am I, like, I can't blame them, I'm also that, right? So how do I move to that space of compassion? And how do I realize that the English were ransacked by the Vikings and taken over by the Romans? This flip continues to happen of perpetrator, victim, and then my Irish, Scottish ancestors go over to Salt Lake City, which wasn't Salt Lake City, it was like the Uinta, Wasatch area, the Native Americans were, because they were victims. They were running from tyranny, like running from this energy that is continually moving forward, which again, what is that movie, that energy that's continuing to move forward, to conquer? That's the lost feminine. That's the feminine that's been forgotten in the masculine, and the feminine that's been suppressed within women. The women, like for me, looking at the Mormons, I'm like, why did a woman never actually stand up and be like, this is crazy, what are you doing, you know? They had been convinced that they were powerless, and they believed it. And I don't believe it anymore. But so then they came over and they decided that they wanted to set up shop in that area where the Native Americans were. And I'm not proud to say, but our exact ancestors were some of those that led the charge on the genocide of those Native Americans. And it's, again, not in the history. I had to dig very far, and the only reason that I recalled, I had a memory of that happening that led to that research. And simultaneously, which is again the beautiful balancing harmony of this, is that my dad has, his grandfather was one of the Ute chiefs. So I have the side of me that was annihilating, and then I had the side of me that was that, right? That was the victim, but was both energies. So it's just a fascinating exploration. And again, it doesn't have to be that exact, like it might not be for you. You might not have that parallel experience, but we can draw upon that and dive into that deeper space again within the healed feminine energy within us of compassion, of forgiveness, to see that outside of ourselves as a part of it. And what I love about the ancestral work is that it really gives context for compassion, because we realize that people are only doing things because of their own woundedness, their own brokenness, their own forgetfulness, and it doesn't excuse it. We set boundaries for those behaviors by using our voice, but we have understanding. And with that understanding, with that witnessing, the healing begins.
It's such a beautiful testimony. I'm glad this is on film. This is a shareable wave. That's wonderful. Just wanted to say, when we originally talked about the Olmec using obsidian mirrors for ancestor phone calls, realizing the conjugation for longitudinal ancestor, electromagnetics was there, they also walked like 60 miles to get the right stone in which their ancestors could inhabit the stone. It was a high dielectric. And where did they learn that? We think actually it's connected to the Thoth Quetzalcoatl Viracocha story, which is part of my lecture today, actually, which is cool.
This is a perfect segue then.
But at this moment, we have another 10 minutes or so. Any comments or questions? Yes. Oh, good.
Can I start? Thank you.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for the beautiful presentation. Michael Tassarion goes into great detail about the suppression of the sacred feminine. Maybe you might have stumbled upon that. I was wondering, you talked about the source of the suppression, even went back to the Orion, and there are specific reflections of that source of suppression in our conceivable reality, like the agencies or governments that we see and experience. I was wondering, would you suggest a specific approach towards those agencies apart from the internal work that we do? Would there be an external approach that you would suggest?
That's a good question. Yes, I think that, I mean, I know that this might sound funny to this group, but they're just people behind those organizations. Like, they're humans just like us. And so I think beginning to, I mean, especially coming from an approach of empowerment, we can only offer evolution. We can only invite to evolve. It's free will for them to decide what they want to do. But how that invitation is given is up to us. So when I've been met, even say like within my partner, within my beloved, that like imbalanced masculine, or when I see that imbalanced masculine within me, right, that is that perpetuation of those kinds of behaviors in the world. The approach that I've taken is like this, like the softer I become, and the more caring and the more feeling to that wounded part's experience, the more that it literally, like, it just has to melt, like, because that aspect within them, like, it can't stand, because this other thing, harmony, wholeness, is truth. Like, it has to fall. And simultaneously holding that strength of that truth, right? So not coming at things like in a combative nature or a blame nature, but being like, I have that same part too. Like, I am there with you, you know? Like, there's parts of me that want to dominate and control and like take all the resources on the world, you know, like to feel all those parts within us. And I think as we do this work and as we feel all these parts, then we truly have these very relatable, shareable waves where then they feel it and they're like, oh crap, oh no. And it just, you know. So does that help?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Beautiful answer, beautiful. We know, lady, yeah, more questions.
Okay. So, yeah, thank you. I have a couple of questions actually. So my question to you is, in the ancestral healing, is there a way for you to differentiate whether it's your karma that you're here to settle with your family line versus being a volunteer, where you're sort of taking that karma of the family line and it has nothing to do with you, but you're entangled in it to clear it, sort of thing?
Yeah.
So is there a way for you to, even working with other people, to tell the difference?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my first question.
Okay.
And my second question to Dan is like, what is it about the victim-perpetrator dynamic in the charge collapse? Like, is it an error of the conjugation or the environment that gets people to be in this perpetrator-victim dynamic versus being in perfect
Her answer
interpolation?
was so much better than I could have said. The collapse is the compassion. I feel you, you feel me, there's implosion, fusion, plasma, and that is self-sorting. It's a beautiful answer, really. I refer you back to the lady.
But why is it not natural? Like, why is it not in harmony already,
Yeah.
like from the
Yeah,
beginning, right?
where's
Yeah.
the first seed of that compassion come from? Which you also answered, but yes.
Yeah, or the first seed of the, I guess, the victim perpetrator or the violence. That's what I'm interested in. It's like,
Yeah.
how does the violence start within the physics?
Yeah.
The physics of consciousness. Yeah.
The first,
Good question.
well, I can't pretend to answer that. That's like but also I'm going to. Because the first thing that came to me is like, it's the original wound of separation
Good answer.
of the some part of us that wasn't allowed to be, that then had to separate, which then has experienced the form of disconnection from the all.
The isolation, exactly.
Yeah, that isolation.
Compassion is what pulls that back together.
And that's the point of the feminine, right? Is to bring back together and to bring back that connection. And to answer your question about the karma versus the role versus this, it's all super stacked and blueprinted in a way that's very intentional in my experience. So the past lives that I've had, or like the simultaneous incarnations I have, totally match my ancestral patterns, right? So there's like, and and the karma of them. Like it's like a big theme that I find totally maps with all of the aspects. And the key is to not take on too much. Like, you know, like I think that's when we feel this conviction and passion, and when we also kind of see the way, and have this big heart to serve, we want to just like go heal it all, and that's not the job, you know. And that's where it comes back to this microcosm of like when we come into harmony ourselves, like it has such fast rippling effects. And the great thing is doing it within ourselves and doing the ancestral part. It's kind of a hack for free will. I found that it's like, because I like a little bit to impose, you know, that's just, I'm going to acknowledge that that's a part of me. But it really, it shifts the field in such a way that your family and like your lineage has to change, like the constellation. It has to change. And how it changes is the free will. But for the most part, positivity and wholeness wants to exist. So that's the direction it ends up going. And I will say too that I didn't go too deep into it, which is probably okay for the men here. But but part of the purpose of bleeding is to release karma. And what women are doing is we're releasing for ourselves, we're releasing for our men, we're releasing for our family, for our community. And so when we're in a really safe space, in our relationship, in ourselves, in the place that we are, and we can bleed in a way that we're really safe, it can release. If we're not, it doesn't. And that's one of the reasons that there's been a lot of stagnation and that negativity can't move through, is because women's blood isn't going into the earth and we're not safely in that ability to bleed. And that's a really important piece. Just going to throw that in real quick.
Well, thank you also for your insights. Absolutely fantastic. And you started out with that the Olmec, the Toltecs, were all about rising your energy. And that's where I came to through my path. It's the key issue, because we can only be great and strong and move things if we are of high energy. And I found, as a gift from a friend, I was also going like at sunset, well, filling up energy. It does work, but it's sort of slow. The fastest way of filling our energy is to connect ourselves with the knowing that we do what we really, really want from our inner longings, and our energy field is just, whoo-wee, it's filling up full speed, and it's so fantastic. And so finding our inner pathway, doing what we really, really want to do, is the key issue. And then we are full of energy. We can't be attacked so easily. We will find our ways and can be functional in building this great future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's so beautiful and so important, because I think that in this wonderful alternative world, we can just be like, okay, what else do I need to do? Like to, you know, energize myself, or this or that, or this technique or this thing. And it's like, you just need to express, you know, like that thing within your heart and live that and do that, and it works, right? That is the thing that is almost like free energy in our bodies, right? That give us that vitality to continue.
And love ourselves for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's very beautiful. Yeah. Yes.
So I think one more.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a very quick question.
Yeah.
Do you have a daughter?
No. But to be continued. So like all this is being said without. Yeah. To be continued though. Yeah.
I wanted to say, when you asked that very good question, where is the seed of the first compassion? What came to mind as I was in the bathroom taking a pee was when the Andromedans, through Alex Collier, told us, me, whatever.
Microphone, please.
Oh, I'll speak
Please.
loud. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Speak
We
loud.
need.
The only pain you feel is the love you withhold. That was
Oh.
Jorge Visayas message. Yeah. And how that relates to Bridget's answer, I think, is when she said, you know, it is your pain that made you choose isolation, and the bridge is the compassion that then, you know, because withholding love means to withhold embedding, actually. The electrical definition of compassion, which I think is the physics of your answer. Embedding is compassion.
And sometimes you can't embed. And so separation has its purpose, right? You know, when we're babies in the womb, or we're in situations in the world, war, this, that, we don't want to embed with certain things. And so separation and really that's actually probably the biggest pain, is that we couldn't embed and we wanted to. And so that's soul retrieval work.
And embedding is what put you in the magnetic line in the first place.
Yes, yes.
I'm curious, and I would question the thought process of characterizing the women in your example, the Mormon women, as wounded women, because that's a perspective in the now. That's a perspective that was not the case, you know, when they were alive. Because if we start to categorize maybe things that we might see as wrong from the past, we could technically say everyone at all time was being traumatized in some way.
Yeah.
So wouldn't you say that rather than judging and characterizing certain events that happen as, okay, they were traumatized, but rather just accepting it as part of a process of evolution, because in some way, without, you say that they were breeding horses, but without them, you would not be here today. So wouldn't you say, rather than judging and, you know, putting it in a negative light, is to just accepting it and continuing moving forward in the evolution of going ever greater heights and higher consciousness? Wouldn't you say that's...
I think that sounds really beautiful.
Yeah.
No, it's truth. It's truth. Thank you for that. And one of the things that, and for me, I'm still in a process. I'm still in a process with it. And I absolutely see them as incredibly strong, incredibly beautiful, like, because I made it. Like, obviously things were working, you know, in some way in those regards, and like the amount of perseverance and all the beautiful qualities that they had for me to be here. And part of the stages of working with the ancestry is like saying the things that you don't want, like having contrast to be able to step into what is the new energy, what is the different energy that I want to live, right? And so that's still where I'm at, but I really appreciate that, because I do feel that. And so thank you for inviting that in.
Let's thank you. Just last question.
Yeah.
We want to have a little break before Patrick. Please, Iris. Yes. Brief.
I want to thank you for this amazingly profound sharing and your example of living authenticity, because I think that's the center point, right, where we integrate all the shadows from an open heart. That's where the negative and the positive come together, and that's healing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Exactly. So, more conversation with Bridget and her mother. They're here. Say hi.